Military parents never miss a beat, and neither does the Johns Hopkins U.S. Family Health Plan. Built for every warrior in your family. With more than 40 years of service to military families, TRICARE Prime benefits plus exclusive extras. Learn more at warriorsathome.com.
Hello, and welcome back to another very special episode of Yeah, We Read It. I'm one of your hosts, Meggie.
And I'm also one of your hosts. My name's Laura.
And this is our last book in the John Green series. We are reading the 2017 Turtles All the Way Down.
Yeah.
It is definitely something that captures like the later 2010s that I feel like there's not a lot of media for, and I'm very excited about it. And I'm also doubly excited because joining us today is our very good friend Nate Todd.
Hi!
Yay!
Stoked to be here.
Yay! Thank you for coming, Nate. We're so excited.
Yeah.
Also, our first repeat guest.
Let's go!
Oh my gosh, you are!
We cannot not mention. Nate was here for the second Maze Runner prequel. And it was
that was so bad.
That book was a trip, and this book was also a trip, but in a much better and more pleasant way.
Oh yeah, level of enjoyment in quality of books. This just completely 180.
Oh my god, no! I devoured this book. I guzzled it right down my little throat like it was a turtle.
It was really good. For those of you who might not be familiar with Turtles All the Way Down and maybe stopped at The Fault in the Stars, I feel like it's like the same iteration of like people in like TV shows will have certain times when they stop watching. I think like in Dexter, like when his wife dies, it's like you either are part of The Fault in the Stars people or you kept reading.
Yeah.
But Turtles All the Way Down is about a girl named Aza who has obsessive compulsive disorder. And she it's like a little bit of a murder mystery.
Yeah. And I'm really excited to talk about it. I also really like this book as a representation of mental health because we never nobody ever runs into the room and is like, Aza, your OCD is showing. It's just like, we just kind of see it through her eyes, and it's never like blanketly like said or stated. It's just very much like it's a thing that's a part of her, and it really just does really kind of destroy her entire psyche, which is really like chilling to watch. And we'll get into all of this, but I'm really, really excited to talk about this, especially as this is John Green's most recent young adult book. We don't know if he'll ever write one again. I assume he would. But I was telling Meggie this earlier, texting before we started this, that John Green has officially graduated from using the R word in his books and also making any fat-phobic comments.
Wow.
But then, that it's like, that's also such a product, I think, of like the 2010s. Like we were all so awful about, saying things are gay or telling people they're fat or being so obsessed with our image and stuff like that. So this book very much feels like, coming into a light of where we are today.
That's great.
He also wrote this book because he has OCD, right? I just found like a Guardian article that said that he had OCD.
He has some semblances of that. I'm pretty sure. I could be.
Oh wow!
I can't believe it's been 6 years since he's wrote a book. Then
yeah,
this was 2017. I kind of always thought of him as like a very like almost like a Stephen King.
Yeah, no, not at all.
I think maybe just there was a time where I saw so many of his films being or so many of his books being adapted into film.
Yeah, because I think then he switched over into like podcasts, and then he recently came out with a book that I think was more nonfiction. I think in the last 2-ish years.
Yeah, I think he's done a book of like essays too or something. But he's definitely a very prolific writer, and also I think of just a very prolific creator, because it's not like, oh, he's just an author. He also has his like Vlogbrothers empire. He has, his podcasts and everything like that. So it's like, he's very versatile. And I feel like this book very much tapped into all of the things John Green does as tropey, but in like the best way. Like this really highlights the strengths of his entire career, I would say.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. So let's dive in, because I feel like we're just like pre-gushing before the actual gush of the book.
Yes.
So let's dive in. So we have our protagonist Aza, who we are introduced to, and at the start of the book, she is having lunch with her two best friends, Michael and Daisy. And we immediately get a limelight into kind of how Aza perceives and feels she's perceived. She immediately says that she feels like she's a sidekick to Daisy, and we immediately get a lens into her worrying about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I kind of loved how we were introduced to her as like just kind of like any quote unquote normal teen. You know, like the first couple, like the first chapter or two, I'm trying to figure out like, okay, what's the deal here? Like, you know, as we do
what's
when we
the
start.
deal here?
Yeah, and then I like distinctly remember like this altered feeling I got when she first talked about I'm gonna totally butcher everything how she described it, but like the microorganisms within her stomach, and how like she kind of, oh sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was literally thinking about this very elaborate disease that I definitely have. I'm totally fearful of having. And
yeah, the disease that she's
that's a
obsessed
plane
with.
for that character.
Yeah, she's obsessed with C. diff, which is like an inflammation of the colon, according to Google. And she is really like very obsessed with germs. And when Daisy is talking, and more specifically asking her if she knows about this person named Davis Pickett, who is the son of a billionaire, because Aza and Davis went to camp together. Aza's
Orphan
just
camp.
like not
Orphan
camp. Yes.
Yeah.
Her dad is dead. But she's just not listening.
Alert.
Yeah. I think that's pretty early on that it's said.
No, I was joking.
Spoiler.
But Aza's also very open with her thoughts. She's like, yep, I'm not paying attention. This is what I'm doing. So Daisy immediately is like, hey, we should hang out after school and like, let's distract you from your thought spiral. And we also learned that her mom is a math teacher at the school, and we get a little aside with her and her mom that compares school to prison. Which I like that her mom brought that up. She's like, yep, this is basically prison, so have fun at next period.
And that was a pretty eye-opening part where it kind of made you realize that of course you have to, you know, check and be like, well, no, it's not actually like prison, but like how they compare it with, you know, the bells ringing at like the arbitrary time of, oh, class gets out at 2:47. Everything. I thought that was kind of funny to hear from the mom.
Yeah. I do love that they have like a very fun like friend dynamic, which is super super sweet. But her mom is like very stressed being a single mom about paying for her college, something they're gonna have to figure out later on. Because right now Daisy is going over to Aza's, and she has work at Chuck E. Cheese later. What a flex! I would have been so excited to be like, yes, I was Chester E. Cheese last night. I was the one.
She's really embarrassed by it, which I'm like, Daisy, you wait till you get to college. People are going to love that fact about you, that you were Charles Entertainment Cheese a few nights a week.
Charles Entertainment Cheese.
And Daisy is wanting Aza to like suss out this mystery, because Aza is the link to Davis Pickett, aforementioned billionaire son, and Davis's dad has recently gone missing. He's evaded the cops for like tax evasion, and he has a $100,000 bounty on his head. And Daisy really wants that money.
Yeah, they hear about this like while they're like shuffling through the radio on her like car that was her dad's car.
Harold,
that she named Harold.
the car.
And I also do love that as a plot point, because John Green does have this like way of writing that always feels like you're like watching like a movie. And that like kind of moment where they're scrubbing through the radio and then they hear, you know, about the thing that they were talking to at lunch, and now it has a reward. It felt like such like a movie to me, and I was like, dang it, I'd watch this movie.
I had a
and you can.
I had like a Daisy-esque best friend in high school who, you know, sadly I no longer really keep in touch with or associate with. But the dynamic between the two, how they both have their they have very polarizing personalities, but yet still manage to like mesh together in a way that like, you know, uplifts one another, but also ultimately that we find out later on in the book, you know, there's a lot of what's the word, contention? Is that
I think contention is
contention
a good
between
word.
the two. But I kind of loved seeing the start of this start for us, like this friendship of, okay, clearly they're in each other's lives and they know a lot about each other, but they also have totally two different things going on. Which I feel like definitely represents friendship in high school in a way.
100%.
It was really fun because they did like absolutely push each other to embrace their fears, and they both feared different things. Like in this moment, when they hear about the billionaire on the radio, Daisy's like, we're taking initiative because Aza knows that there's a security camera in the woods for deers and stuff. And she's like, maybe the billionaire's on the camera. And Daisy kind of pushes Aza out of her comfort zone to like go on the river and go down White River in Indiana, which is like a really dirty river. But it's like when Aza is pushed to be in those situations, her mind just like doesn't think about the things because it's like, this is the thing we're doing. And it seems like Daisy is definitely a doer. And Aza kind of grounds her sometimes back to earth.
Yeah.
I would also like to note that Daisy is a prolific author in writing, for the readers who may not know, Star Wars fan fiction.
Yes.
More specifically, romantic and intimate stories between Chewbacca and Rey.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how much of y'all have seen Star Wars, but that is absolutely hilarious.
Oh, I think it's
and
so
endearing.
funny.
And I just love how she's been doing it for years, and
Yeah.
it is the cornerstone to her character.
Yeah.
She's a really staunch defender of it too, because she's like, oh, so there's nothing wrong with like Han Solo, like his lore being that he was married to like a Wookiee, but when Rey is, it's like, I'm a furry. I was like, you go off, you have your hot take.
And this is also a really good example of John Green, as we know throughout reading his books. Like, he's just like a fountain of like weird facts and weird knowledge. And this is a really good way of him to utilize something he knows a lot about, but put it into his character in a way that makes sense by having just a teen girl who writes fan fiction. I thought that was such a nice like way of doing what he's done in a lot of his books by just having like, yep, this is her thing and this is why it makes sense. But she does call into Chuck E. Cheese so they can go investigate. She pretends she's sick. Aza has an old canoe that's filled with spiders. Well, dead spiders, I should say. So they can go down the White River since her house is right there. And they can, take a little sail on down to Davis Pickett's mansion. And Aza's kind of getting lost in her thoughts in a good way while they're going down the river, which I think is really good kind of start, because as the book goes on, her spirals get worse and worse and worse. So this is kind of her getting lost in her thoughts in a good way. But they like immediately find this camera that they're looking for in the woods. She immediately gets the pictures on her phone because it has like a Bluetooth hookup, and they immediately get a picture of Randall Pickett's like back leaving at like 5 a.m. So they're like, great, that was pretty easy.
That was pretty easy. And they kind of have like no time to process this because a security guard saw Aza like over there doing things. So Daisy was like, we got to act fast. So she breaks the canoe and she's like, hey, oh my gosh, Mr. Security Man. I think his name is Lyle.
His name's
like,
Lyle. Like the crocodile.
Oh, you mean voiced by Shawn Mendes?
Yes, just like that.
And Lyle, aka Shawn Mendes, comes over and their canoe has crashed, and Daisy's like, oh, it's okay because Davis is a friend of ours, like we just needed help and we knew that this was his place. And lucky for them, Davis goes along with it when the security guard brings him over, because that was a very big shot in the dark.
Yeah, but also Davis isn't gonna like let them off the hook. He's immediately like, I know you guys want this freaking reward. That's what everybody wants. So many people have been talking to me at school today. But like, I don't know where my dad is. Like, I have nothing to tell you if that's what you want. Daisy, she's gonna come in clutch for a second time, and she's gonna say, no, we're not here for the reward. We're here because Aza has a crush on you.
And it seems like Davis might have a crush on her, because in the most romantic, heart-stopping, like if someone did this to me in high school, I would have been like, wow, he was like, I remember Dr. Pepper's your favorite soda. Do you want a Dr. Pepper? I would have been like, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The amount of mentions for Dr. Pepper in this book, big chef's kiss from me, because Dr. Pepper is a superior soda.
It's a great soda.
Made me want a Dr. Pepper personally.
Me too.
But we also learned kind of in this that Davis doesn't really have like the best feelings towards his father. It's not like he's like distraught that his father's missing. He's more upset, and he's more just kind of indifferent in a way. It's kind of teetering that line. He's very much like, my dad's going to get away with this. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's kind of a shitbag. Shitbag is a quote in this book. I'm not just saying that for the sake of the podcast. And then he's like, anyway, enough about me and my feelings about my dad. Let's go meet Malik the zoologist and our tutora. So they go meet Malik the zoologist and their tutora, which is a fancy old-timey lizard.
Yeah, it's like a lizard from dinosaur times. It lives to be 150 years old.
Same.
I will never die.
I'm immortal. That sucks, doesn't it?
Hey,
Yeah.
now's the time to be it, I guess.
But Davis does offer them a ride home because their canoe is broken. So he takes them into the main house where they meet his younger brother Noah and Rosa, who's like their house manager. And we learn a little bit more about Davis here because Asa ends up kind of stalking the paintings that they have, and they have little, side conversation about how he feels like he's always being watched. And he kind of wants his dad to stay gone in a way because without his dad, maybe he'll be kind of free a little bit more.
Yeah, and then he also keeps like mentioning that his younger brother just gets like a lot of hope from his dad that his dad will
Yeah.
never fulfill. So, kind of like a reason he wants him gone.
Mhm.
And the car ride home is pretty quiet. Once he drops him off, Asa gives him her number so they can like become friends again, whatever that means. And Daisy is like reporting on the big lizard that we met and dropping facts to Asa that his dad, the Billy Davis's dad, left his entire fortune to the lizard through a corporation, since you can't just outright leave money to an animal, which is fucking crazy.
Nuts. Yeah, like that's absolutely not like his kids don't get anything, like it's just for the lizard. We're like, that's absolutely insane.
And the reason behind it being it's because he believes that this lizard will solve death or will cure death.
Yeah.
Is the reason.
Yeah.
And like all the resources that he has manifested or created in his life need to go to making sure that this lizard lives as long as possible and is studied on. So they can, I just loved how in the book they said cure death.
Yeah. And we don't learn that till later, and it's mentioned so casually, and it's so funny, and I can't wait till we get to that like specific moment because I definitely want to talk about that more. But that night, Asa does kind of have a thought spiral because now she's having some anxiety around the thoughts of dating somebody. And she also has to kind of confess to her mom, like, why did a security guard drop off our fixed canoe? And who is what's up with Davis Pickett?
God, the dating spiral was so funny. I read that out loud to Anna in the car because I was like, this reminds me of you. Because there was like number 5, because she goes through the reasons she doesn't want to, which is like kissing, you swap bacteria and whatever. And it's like those quiet moments when you're a couple and you're like, what are you thinking to the other person? And you're supposed to say something cute, like, I'm thinking about you. But she's like, but really, I'm thinking about this bacteria that solely exists in cows' stomachs. I was like, that is so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
So
feel like Jonathan does a good job of finding like humor in these moments of her thought spirals rather than just it being completely deteriorating to Asa. Because I think if that was the entire book of just watching this poor teenage girl just like constantly have these negative spirals that inflict her with so much just nausea and pain and everything, it'd be such a harder book to read. But he does a really good book of finding those moments to kind of have empathy and like moments of lightheartedness with it.
Yeah, it almost as people, for speaking for myself who don't have these conditions, there could be many people, thankfully not super duper demonstrated in this book, but there could be many people who don't have patience for people who have certain mental illnesses and OCD, and in this way, kind of going off of what you just said, Laura, like we're allowed to like find this endearing and and empathize with her in a way where we're like warming up to, how do you say her name? Asa, yeah. To the end of the alphabet and back. That's so beautiful. Yeah, which I thought was just like an absolutely pleasant way to get to know her more.
Yeah, because I think there's like a lot of books. I mean, especially with like teen angst books. I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking of like The Bell Jar with Sylvia Plath, but I think we get like a lot of depression books or like I'm suicidal. I think that's a very you got all that anger and angst as a teen. That's the way to funnel it. And I don't really see a lot of obsessive compulsive or like the nonstop thinking books. And
or even like just like a base level anxiety.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was like, oh man, because I think this way sometimes too a lot. I was like, I wish I would have read these books instead of like I want to kill myself books.
Right? No, I got anxiety reading this book because I also have like thought spiral times, and I was like, oh, this is weird to read because this is exactly what it's like. And it was a lot. I was like, oh, this book's so good, but also a mirror in front of me.
Yeah.
But that
We get a
night,
bit of, like, background too from this in the following,
yeah.
passage because we learned that, like, her dad dropped dead from just, like, a heart attack mowing, which
Mhm.
I kinda thought was, like, maybe the reason she had a bit of OCD was, like, she never had an answer for, like, why her dad died. It was just,
Yeah.
like, a heart attack out of nowhere, so she was always thinking, "What if there's this disease within me?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know what? A lot of this book is similar to the show Never Have I Ever, which I know came
Ugh,
out after this book, but I was like,
so
this
good.
book has a lot of parallels. Just like with like the dead dad and the kind of, having some sort of mental disorder after the fact and coping with that and learning with that. And even like the breaking of the phone, which happens later. It's very weird. Lots of similarities in between these two.
Yeah.
But this night they're gonna go to Applebee's. This is where Daisy and her hang out because her mom got swindled into buying a box of coupons, which was from a Boy Scout, which was mostly 2 for $10 burgers at Applebee's.
Not a bad deal.
So her and Daisy are making their way through. I love some frugal couponers. And that's also so relatable in high school. I feel like we all had those places that you went just because they were cheap. Like me and my friends always went to
Mhm.
Steak and Shake.
Always Burger
Um,
King. My mom had coupons to Burger I mean, you know that. My mom always has
yeah.
coupons to Burger King.
But we learned that Daisy is very, very big in the fan fiction world. We get more insight into that. And she's received a dick pic from a fan.
Oh my gosh.
And Daisy's kind of just contemplating, like, is this what I've become? A person who gets dick pics based on my writing?
There's a part where and this is when I like started identifying a lot with Daisy is when she
Yeah.
like breaks down the mental thought process of someone who wants to send a dick pic.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
all have notes on this, like please feel free to share in with us. But she basically kind of like walks through like,
Yeah.
oh, I just read this like content. I've enjoyed the love story between these two people. You know what? A photo of my penis is a really good way to show my admiration to that. And I just identified with that so much. Not to sending the
Yeah.
dick pics of to anyone
Yeah.
really, but just there. I feel like Daisy, like her character is she is very analytical. She has a very huge imagination because
Yeah.
obviously she's writing like this content. Um, and for I don't know that scene where she kind of broke down that thought process, just kind of really like cemented how she views I gosh Asia
Aza.
Aza, how she'll like view Aza like moving forward, or how she tries to understand Aza as she
Yeah.
learns more about her condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're also using this kind of hangout to not just do homework and hang like they normally do. They're doing detective workshop.
Yes, they are.
Mhm.
So they're learning about how wills work. Aza's supposed to be researching the case more, but instead just starts stalking Davis on social media.
Yeah.
And she finds his little blog where he likes to, find quotes that he likes and journal about how those quotes make him feel or relate to his real life. And this is kind of where she starts to like Davis more. She's like, wow, he's rich and
He's like an artist, guys. He's a suffering artist.
poetic.
It's so funny, and then after this, Daisy's like, "What have you been doing?" And Aza's like, "I just found some quotes about Emily Dickinson from Davis's journal." And Daisy's like, "That's great. I obtained a police report referring to the disappearance of the billionaire by finagling it from like this junior reporter because she lied and said that she was his colleague. And if
Oh
he
Yeah.
my god.
doesn't get to the office on like this Friday night and get the report, he will be fired."
Yeah, she created a fake email address, and Aza's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We don't want to get this guy fired. And Daisy's like, we're not going to get him fired. But of course,
Yeah.
Aza, the warrior that she is so hung up on this, like, we're going to get caught now. But they don't. And Aza actually acknowledges that. And she's like, oh, it was fine. The guy still works there, and nothing bad happened, and nobody found us.
It
We
is an
also find out,
eventful school day though the next day because that's
yeah,
when their friend Michael, is that what you
yes,
guys were thinking?
yes,
Michael asks Aza if he should ask out Daisy, but Aza completely interrupts him, being like, "Oh no, I don't think it's like
Oh
between
yeah.
us. I don't think we should." And he's like, "No, I was asking for your friend."
to
And
be
she's like,
fair,
"God."
in her defense, he did lead it up like he was about to ask her out. He was like,
yes.
do you think it's weird if like two people in the same friend group date and that would interrupt it? Like, I think somebody was trying to ask me out too. I'd be like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
As a reader, I thought, well, here's the other love interest.
Yeah.
Like, so
yeah,
I was.
Ooh, you were like love triangle.
Yeah, that's where I thought I was going for. Like, well, till
until it did.
Till later, he was like, actually, Daisy's my girl.
Yeah, but Daisy's not down, which I think is hilarious. She thinks Michael looks like a giant baby.
Yeah, I think I got like a very I got a distinct photo of like Michael in my head because she described him as a giant baby and then also looking like Drake. And I was like, oh my God.
You can see it.
That. That's so funny. That is so funny.
But between Daisy not being down and the rest of school, Aza does read this police report, and she learns that they actually have more info than the police report because they have an image with a timestamp. And she's like, that might be exactly what they need. Maybe that would be enough to get us this reward. But Aza does have a massive conscience. No surprise there. So she's going to talk to Davis about it first. But before then, she does learn that the reward will only be given if Pickett's actually found.
Yeah. So Davis, luckily, finally texts Aza, and right off the bat, he is 0 to 100. He's like existential about his dad being gone. He's like, my younger brother's a mess. And I was like, honestly, I feel like I trauma dump too. If that's going to be the first text message I'm going to send, I'm going to make you remember me.
In a way, I feel like they're kind of good for each other in a way because they both just seem to have no filter on what they're going through. But yeah, Davis does just immediately like, by the way, here's what's going on in my life. Also, it's my late mom's birthday. How are you?
Can't really blame him though, with his father being gone, his younger brother essentially being an alcoholic in 8th grade and not having a mom, like, and the only other like adult figures in his life are just people paid to be in his life. You kind of empathize with him on him just being so front on his emotions. Like,
oh yeah, he needs some emotional support. And in texting Aza too, he's like kind of talking to her to maybe not say anything about his dad to like his younger brother if she ever runs into him, because he like doesn't want his dad to go to jail on his brother's behalf. Davis couldn't give a fuck less, but Noah is like 13 and he's like, I don't want that to happen.
Yeah. We do find out the next day that Daisy, in an effort to kind of swipe Michael, just pitched a double date instead with Aza and Davis, and then obviously Daisy and Michael. And Aza's like, what? Why would you do that? I don't want to date anyone. She's, we're just all hanging out as friends. It'll be fine. We'll go to Applebee's. So they're gonna do that.
Again, just like a beautiful thing that like you could only get away with in like a high school friendship. I feel like.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the forced double dates. Oh my God, I feel like in high school those were so anxiety inducing. I was like,
please take him to the dance because like I'm going with what's his face.
Yeah,
I'm going with best friend, and like it's gonna be so weird.
The politics of it. We've been hyping up Big Brother too much. Meanwhile, homecoming dances have been doing that for years. But Aza is going to her doctor. I think this is the first time we meet her psychiatrist, Dr. Singe, and Singh, and she's talking about her like anxieties and OCD while she's at the doctor. She used to go a lot more, but her mental health has been better, so she's not going to Dr. Singh as much. And she does tell Dr. Singh that she's like not taking her Lexapro because it freaks her out. The idea that like her thoughts need to be like, I don't know, controlled, because she's like, if I'm just my thoughts, then I hate that person.
Yeah.
Or this concept of like who I am has to be kickstarted by a pill.
Yeah.
She doesn't like that.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so interesting because like Aza has such a interesting way of thinking of like, she thinks doing certain, actions will cure her or fix her. And yet she does have an actual like olive branch and like, hey, you just have to take these medications accordingly and you will feel better. And yet she's like, nope, I'm going to use hand sanitizer and Band-Aids to not get a illness that I think I'm susceptible to. So I feel like that just goes to show like the type of thinking where it's like someone is so obsessed with germs and not getting sick, yet she is sick in a way and not doing anything to actually commit to, you know, mediating that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because when she is like really overwhelmed, she'll press her thumb down into the palm of her right hand and reopen this wound, essentially, that she is just constantly
Yeah, which I
rebandaging.
imagine that would have gotten infected by now because it's like she's been reopening that for years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes forgetting to change the Band-Aid, which
Yeah.
sends her into a spiral.
Yeah.
You know?
No, yeah, she has to change this Band-Aid like every certain amount of hours, which I can't imagine the Band-Aid budget she's going through to have to wear a Band-Aid like 5+ times a day, 365 days a year. That's gonna add up.
Listen, as someone who typically bandages their fingers every night because I pick at them nonstop, yeah, it's really expensive. You go through like one of the big ones in about a month.
Yeah.
Gotta get that Costco bolt.
Yeah, you gotta get a Costco membership to supply that.
Yeah.
But the night of this double date, Aza's mom's going into mom mode, and she's like, "Hey, Aza, you be careful around that picket boy." And she's like, "Mom, it's fine. Like, we're not even dating." And her mom's like, "No, just be careful. I don't want my only daughter." And she's like, "Mom, shut up. We're not dating." But then they go to Applebee's, and Davis is laying it on thick. He's like, "I think we can all spring for some Pepsis." And everyone's in awe because they never get Pepsis when they go to Applebee's.
That was so funny when you said, "I think we can spring for some Pepsis."
Right?
I mean, that's, to me, it's not a hot move because it's Pepsi.
But
That's
like
it.
in high school, I remember there was an episode of Hey Arnold where Gerald and Arnold come across a big bag of money and they go to some bar to play pool. And Arnold like wins the game and he's like, yeah. And then he turns around and he goes, sodas for everyone.
Yeah.
And the entire bar is like, hell yeah, these kids rule. And you know, of course they did that because when you're a kid, you're watching that and being like, I would love to have as much soda as I want. And you just know
for
that.
sure.
That
Yeah.
was the rich boy
That was
fun.
a rich
She
boy
was like, I'm gonna play with these bitches with some soda.
And they do.
Hilarious.
They get lots of soda. They get all this Pepsi, and they take that sugar high and they apply it to a long conversation on Star Wars, which Asa feels really left out of because I just don't think she really pays attention to Star Wars. It's not like she
Yeah.
hasn't seen it. Daisy always makes her watch it. But
Yeah, you know, I interpreted that as like not like, oh, she's not interested, or I interpret it more as like she cannot pay attention to this conversation for the life of her,
Yeah.
which I totally related to because she feels like she's like waiting for cues to look like she's present in the conversation. So she's just laughing when people are laughing, or like nodding her head when it seems appropriate. But she seems like very removed from it, which I
which I know we'll dive into like, you know, later on, but I mean, this kind of lays some of the groundwork of the fight that they get into at the end of the book. And, you know, upon hindsight, you don't really realize, I'm sure like if you reread this book, you would see more of Daisy's perspective when that fight comes up.
Yeah.
But if Davis couldn't flex any harder, they're going to go to Davis's to watch a movie.
That's in theaters right now. Yeah.
Right.
That's crazy.
Oh man, yeah. And he's just like, shrug. I don't know. I guess when movies come out, you can screen them and they just come to my house for some reason. He just doesn't care. He's like, I've been rich my whole life. This is normal for me.
Yeah, before movies were digital, they had a projectionist come and deliver the movies, but now it's just all digital, so they just show up.
And to like explain how big this house is, they have 5 water slides, a golf course. I don't know if it's like multiple holes, if it's just one golf course, but they have 5 water slides, which was insane to me. Oh, like Salvador Dali original paintings.
Yeah.
And then the way to get into this movie theater is through a bookcase that has all first editions, and I think it's like F. Scott Fitzgerald's first edition book that they have to use as a key that like swings a door out to stadium seating.
The book is Tender's the Night, I'm pretty sure, for anyone who's wondering. I don't think it's The Side of Paradise.
I forgot about that part. That's fucking cool. I love the part where, like, what's the other guy's name? Michael?
Yeah.
Michael's like, oh my gosh, and he like lists all these artists.
He has no chill. Like, he comes in so hot. Like, he's like yelling, just pointing at things that Davis has in his house. And I'm just like, dude, calm down a little bit.
It was kind of endearing though, because he's like naming all these artists. He's like, so-and-so, Picasso, so-and-so. And then Ace just like, the only one I recognize is Picasso.
Yeah.
But like he has like all these original paintings in his house.
But Davis does actively drop like to Aza that he is trying to impress her. So like he likes her.
He does,
And
and they're gonna go look at some stars together, and he's gonna
yeah.
explain the stars to her, which was very sweet. So they're like outside, they're talking about stars. He brings up like that one star theory. I don't know what it is, but it's
Yeah.
um like planets are so far away
Oh,
from us that
I
they're like,
got you. Can I
you
say?
got me? Go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, so like stars, of course, emit light and they're hundreds of millions of light years away. And so what he's basically saying is the sun that we're looking at, for the light of the sun to hit Earth, is like it takes 8 minutes because it's going at the speed of light and it's the proximal distance is however many millions of miles, right? And so the light that you're seeing in the stars, since those are like hundreds of millions of light years away, that light actually has to travel to us. But because it's so far, it's it's traveling super fast. But it's so far, it's taking millions of years for us to see it. So that's actually how they like. That is how they measure length in
Yeah.
space. Is like how long would like a light year is you traveling the speed of light for exactly like for a year. And so something that's 250 million light years away, that would mean it would take 250 million years to see the light that that star is emitting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sweet because when they're talking about this, they're also bringing up like Davis's dead mom and
Mm-hmm.
Aza's dead dad, and they're like, that means that there's like a version of history in the light not being able to like reach
Yeah.
us, that it's like if you look at that planet that was like 45 years ago, it's like emitting that much light. So, and that was like a time when our parents were alive, which
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of like that perfectly encasing memories in amber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, and during this conversation as well, Davis starts, kind of idealizing this whole situation, and he's still kind of on edge about like, are all these people just kind of hanging out with me now because of my whole dad leaving situation?
Mhm.
And he's like, Aza, I need to do this so I can know that like whatever all of us are doing is real. You need to come with me. And he like leads her to like this cottage that's on another side of the property and starts opening cereal boxes and just pulling out wads of cash that are add up to
Nuts.
like $1,000. And then he gives
a hundred
her
thousand dollars.
$100,000 in a bag
Incredible.
and says, you need to take this because this is the reward that you and Daisy wanted. And I feel like if I give you this, I know you're not just going to keep looking for what happened to my dad, which is like,
That's
So
crazy.
it's
sad.
insane.
It's sad.
And
Yeah.
what's more insane is that Aza like starts to say she can't take it, and he goes, "No, take it." And then she like doesn't fight it. She just goes, "Okay." And the girl runs away.
Yeah.
She runs to go tell Daisy and Michael.
He goes, no
Honestly,
offense, but
yeah.
like 100,000 is nothing to me, so like just take it. I don't care. Like
That's
He's
like
like,
when
"Oh,
I
we have
get
cash everywhere."
that's hunting and gathering with your friends. That's like when you're at the other side of a party and you get a really good piece of advice and you have to stay in the conversation. You're like, oh my God, but I really just want to be out of this conversation so I
Yeah.
can go tell my best friend what you just told me.
Yeah, and not Daisy, Aza runs to the house to go find Daisy, and she finds Daisy and Michael hooking up in like some like 4-post canopy bed, and they're like, "You need to leave," and she's like, "You're not. This isn't your guys' bedroom." But it's a really like funny instance. But she ends up talking to Noah instead, who Noah actually asks her to keep looking because he feels like she's doing more than the police is. So now
Mhm.
Aza has a conundrum of like, does she stop looking for the sake of Davis, or does she help this poor kid who looks miserable and just goes home and plays video games every night and just has his soul sucked out of him, essentially?
Yeah, Noah airdrops her from some notes from his dad's phone, and they seem to be notes on how to like flee to other countries. And there's one that just says the jogger's mouth, which she's confused about.
Yeah.
And in getting these notes, she goes back home, obviously, and she has her own dead dad's phone. And like when she really needs to calm down, she'll just swipe through photos of him from time to time. And it feels a lot more like better because it's his phone that he once held like 7 years ago before he died.
Yeah, yeah. And like she notes multiple times that like she knows the photos are backed up somewhere, but she likes to, hold the thing that he took the photos on, even though it's all just like landscapes and pictures.
Yeah, and she tells him
Yeah,
that they got the money. She's like, Dad, I got it to the phone.
yeah. It's really
So
cute.
sweet.
Um, but she does start to, again, she's looking through her photos in the dad's photos in the parking lot. And then Daisy comes and meets her in the parking lot in her car, Harold, because Aza's like, I need to tell you something. And Aza this time has just been walking around with like this bag of money, which is insane to me.
Nuts.
And Aza just lays it on Daisy, saying, hey, here's the situation. We have $100,000. I kind of think we should give it back. And Daisy goes, no, we should keep the money. And for some reason, that's enough for Aza to just hear. And they're like, yep, we're going to split the money 50-50. And they get a call from one of their Davis's lawyers who says, great, we've set up a deposit that you're going to set up a new bank account with, and they're going to take the money, no questions asked, and this will be all taken care of.
Yep, so they go to the bank, they deposit it, they get new bank accounts, so their parents don't even really have to know about it, I guess.
Crazy.
But during this conversation with the lawyer, you know, Aza just also asks him, like, you know, what happens if, you know, Pickett's never found? And we learned that Davis has been appointed the legal guardian. So, like, that'd be a lot of responsibility ultimately on Davis. We're unsure if Davis knows that he's been appointed guardian or not, but that's a huge thing to have to deal with.
Is this also at the point, or it might have actually been earlier, where you find out, like, after 7 years of them being missing is when the state legally considers you dead?
Yeah, that's when Daisy was describing wills, I think, at the first Applebee's.
Yeah,
scene.
okay.
Yeah, so that means, like, in 7 years, Davis would be a guardian, or if they found out he was dead tomorrow, Davis, a high school student, would be legally in charge of his younger brother.
Yeah, and she's really freaking out right now while she's at the bank, too. She's for sure nervous that she has an infection because she's been pressing down on the palm of, like, her hand, and when she gets home, her skin is really inflamed, and she's kind of freaking out, but it's A-okay because Davis invites her to, like, a meteor shower on Thursday. Ooh la la, how romantic, and she agrees to go.
Yeah, and then the next day at school, Daisy has not held up her deal where they were like, we're just going to deposit the money, move on with our day. Daisy has bought a bright orange Beetle car and a new computer. And Daisy keeps being like, Asa, you don't get it. You already have a car. You already have a computer. I need these things and I have the money to buy these things. So it's a whole thing. And Asa feels a little uncomfortable about it.
And she also says at this moment, like, when you suffer, we all suffer, to Aza, which I was like, Daisy, come on. Keep the intrusive thoughts intrusive.
Yeah. But Daisy does also fairly tell her to stop judging her for what she's doing with her half of the money, which also is technically fair.
Yeah.
But also Daisy does say if she was the one who got the 100K, she might not have split it with Aza. So we're really getting both sides of Daisy in this moment. We're getting some like actual like I can empathize with what Daisy's feeling. To some others, like, is Daisy actually a good friend?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really fun parallel to have. I'm like, does Daisy really care?
Yeah.
She's so committed to doing her own thing.
Yeah.
You know? And
so committed.
It's so evident when her and Aza are interacting.
Yeah. Davis, meanwhile, it is date night of this meteor shower, and Aza's mom makes Davis come inside to say hi.
Oh my god.
She gives him this whole spiel of like, my daughter is a gift, you better treat her as such. She's like, that's something you can just buy, and that's not what he needs to hear.
He starts crying. Out of all of the reactions to like what you would expect, the whole like, you better treat my daughter with respect, crying was not the one. You know, she was probably expecting like a little awkward like, yes ma'am, or something like that, or like, I won't do anything. But no, he bursts into tears just because like he hasn't had a mom for so long that in this moment he like is feeling such like maternal energy that he just starts crying.
Doesn't she say something like, you rich people don't have value on anything because you can get whatever you want. You can't just have my daughter because you want her. Like, oof, man.
Yeah, and it's like, it's one of those things I can totally see from like mom's perspective. She's just like, she's not even trying to attack him at all. I think she is trying to like level with him. But of course, Davis, whose dad is missing and mom has already died, you know, he's not addressing a lot of his emotions, I feel. So of course he starts crying, but the date must go on.
Yes.
The date must go on. They get home to Davis's after this little scene, and his housekeeper has made them dinner and is like, I made you spaghetti for you and your girlfriend. And he's like, well, not yet. We're jumping the gun. We're getting too excited. But they are doing boyfriend-girlfriend stuff. They're going back outside to look at the stars. Listen, it's a lot of looking at the stars.
Davis loves his stars.
He loves his stars. And he recites some poetry to her, which she's like, this is really hot. Which is why I realized, this is when I realized it was a straight book, not earlier, just now. I was like, if a boy recited poetry to me, that would be so cringe. But it works here because they kiss.
But it also doesn't work here because this is like, I don't remember if this is Aza's first kiss or her first kiss in a while, but she is immediately worried about germs and what it means because his tongue was in her mouth and they were obviously like touching. And she immediately tells Davis that kissing freaked her out. Like she's not holding any cards to her chest. And he's like, that's totally fine. We'll just like chill for a little bit. Let's go watch a movie. But during the entire movie, she is spiraling on the germs that have entered her body.
Like looking up on the on her phone. Doesn't she have to stop kissing for a second and go to her phone and be like, how long do microbiomes live in my stomach from another person?
Yeah, the date is kind of torpedoed after this. She's really quiet the whole time. And when she gets home, she's like freaking out and showering. I think this is also the first time when she puts pants
not
in.
yet. Not yet.
Okay. And her mom is like, comes in after she showers and she's like, I wish I could make the pain go away. Which we know is never a helpful thing. I feel like my mom will do this all the fucking time. She'll be like, I will pay you to go to Hawaii if you just stop picking your fingers. And I'm almost 30 years old. It doesn't help. It just makes you feel like more of a burden. And then you get more stressed because you can't fix the thing.
I would like to know that this mom hella apologetic about what she did to Davis. And that kind of sticks with her character for the rest of this book. She feels so bad about making this boy cry. So she's like, I'm so sorry for what I did, and what can I do to make you less you?
But after this, Davis and Aza have kind of gotten into a pattern of texting at night, and they do agree to like that they're not going to date. They're just going to, kind of be whatever they are. They're not going to put a label on it because Davis is like, my dad is literally missing. Like, girlfriend is like last thing I want to be concerned with right now. And then the next day after this, she has one of her meetings with Dr. Singh, and Aza starts talking about worried that she isn't real, and like because she has so many doubts about things and she questions so many things. And Dr. Singh says something along the lines of like, your doubts are what make you a real person, which I thought was a really nice quote.
Yeah. And when she gets home, she tells her mom that she might want to do Sarah Lawrence or like Amherst, because her mom still doesn't know about the money, and her mom's like, well, I don't know, maybe with loans, we'll see. And she also asked Davis what he likes about her body, and he says some very nice things, and then he also says his ass, and I was like hot.
They're kind of having some like high school flirting moments, which I was like, ooh la la, John Green, we have not seen you step into this realm before.
Did you like cringe flirt in high school? I was, because we were going through like old messages to our exes, and mine were always like the ridiculous Will Grayson text where I was like, I said something like really dirty last night, and but like don't let your dad see. And I was like, it was just always like such ridiculous language of being like, I don't know. I would try to be really funny, but it was always really cringe.
Where he goes, I don't want to date. Dating is like riding a Ferris wheel, because when you're on a Ferris wheel, all you talk about is being on a Ferris wheel and what you see. Yes. And I'm like, okay, real. And then she goes, well, then what do you want? And he just says, you. And
okay, hot.
Like, okay, like that would totally light a fire in like a high schooler's like, I thought that was so great.
That was great,
yeah.
And he invites her over on Monday, so clearly it's like working. And she's like, yeah, I will. Okay.
Yeah. And okay, so she goes to his house on Monday, and Davis is like, I have to deal with something with Noah right now. You get a tour. And so now she's getting a tour of the estate. And then like after this like little tour, I think she talks to the zoologist again for a little bit. But then Davis kind of comes up and is like, hey, tour can be over now. I'm free. And he basically tells her that like Noah's been suspended and he's really worried because he knows Noah needs a dad, but like he's obviously not a person that can be a dad. But they end up they watch a movie again, and Aza, who's been like, I'm not gonna kiss him. Kissing obviously made me so nervous. She starts to get so swept away again, and she's like, but I really want to kiss him. And she does, and she immediately panics and runs to the bathroom. And then to get these germs out of her body, she swallows the hand sanitizer she usually uses on her cut, which was
tough stuff.
Jarring to just read and also like feel the way her brain was working in that moment. It was a lot.
I know. I cannot believe she swallowed hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a really big. Okay, well, I think in our high school, it was like sometimes people would put hand sanitizer to try to get drunk during classes and then lick their hand.
Oh,
do you guys do that?
No. My high school didn't do that.
I've heard of people doing something close to that, but
I feel like I heard it with like people would try it with like cough syrup, but I never heard it with hand sanitizer.
Oh my god, cough syrup at high school, that would be awful.
Yeah, not as awful as hand sanitizer though.
Aza cannot catch a break though, because after she swallows a good dose of hand sanitizer, she comes out and Noah's like, can you keep searching for my papa? And it's like, she's got to get out of this house. She's got to go.
I know, but she stays for the movie and she keeps spiraling the entire time. And I think Davis even says like, you know, I heard what Noah said to you. And so he's like, so do with that what you will, I guess.
Is this the part where Davis talks about when his mom was in a coma? Or when his mom was unresponsive and would grab her hand?
No, that was when they were looking at the stars when they kissed the first time.
Oh, okay. I did love that part that I did want to talk about on this podcast.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, wait, it's like a rewind, but it's them interacting with each other, so it's basically the same. But how she does confide in him about her condition and how she kind of struggles with this feeling of I don't know who I am because I'm not my thoughts, but I also have to take a pill for my thoughts to be like unhurtful, but I don't like that about myself. And so he talks about his mom and how she would clench his hand even though she was unresponsive in a coma. And the dad was like, we don't care, Davis, like that's just a reaction or that's just a reflex. It's not actually real. But like she kept on doing it. And so he was saying to Aisha, like, no, she was real. She was active there. Like even though her mind was gone and her body was rendered quote unquote useless, she was still there. And then Asia goes, well, what is there that like what is it that what was there inside of her that like made her present that still like had her shine out or whatever? And he goes, I don't know.
Yeah.
And like that just hit so hard of this. And I think it speaks to the overarching message of the book with what the turtles are, which I know we'll get into later, but of like sometimes not knowing the answer can bring a sense of comfort.
Exactly. Yeah. That's like the entire theme of this book.
Yeah. And I loved that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was sweet of like, it's like trying to always have like control over something as a means of being like, once I figure out the answer, then I can begin. It's like, no, you can just begin without knowing. Which I thought was really sweet. And maybe something he wrote about on this new blog that Aza finds with poetry later that night. Little stalker.
Oh, but she goes like full on this time.
Yeah, because he deleted his old blog. So then she like Googles like a phrase that he said to her when he was reciting his poetry. And then she finds his new blog.
And it's so embarrassing. He texts her and is like, someone is on my website right now. Is it you? And she's like, is that bad? And he's like, yeah, it's just someone's been on my website for 30 minutes from Indiana. And if the news got wind of my terrible poetry, I would die. And same. If someone knew that I had an Instagram account, if the news knew that Instagram account for poetry at my age, no. Maybe at 15 it would be cute, but no, absolutely not.
That's so funny.
But this poetry has a lot more to do with her.
Yeah.
And in fact, you could argue is exclusively inspired by her.
Yeah, no, he talks a lot about her in it too. And then they decide to FaceTime. He's like, what are you doing? Do you want to FaceTime? And they both really like FaceTiming. It turns out like that is like the form of communication Aza needs because there's a whole screen in between them and not like any physicalness.
And it seems like Aza's on cloud 9 until the next day when she starts reading Daisy's Star Wars stories. She's like, yeah, I'll give it a chance. I guess I've been reading Davis's poetry. I could do this. And she quickly starts spiraling because, oh man, Daisy made her into this insanely nervous character who kind of like always fucks up the missions for Rey and
Yeah.
Chewbacca because she's overthinking everything.
Which
Yeah.
that is tough.
That is like, that's a hard pill to swallow. Like, this
Yeah.
character's name is like even like named Ayala. So it's like, it's really close to her name. And like, people in the comments like love to hate her because she's so like annoying and awful and ruins everything. And
This is like where I realized where I was like, man, I hated Daisy so much reading this. And I think it was because she reminded me so much of me. And it reminded,
yeah,
like, putting a friend as a character in a thing is like definitely a boundary that I would and probably have crossed, to be honest. I've
yeah,
had a lot of people be like, do not write about me. And I'm like, why? It's like therapy. It's therapeutic. And instead you could just like have a connection and talk to someone about something that is upset instead of just sitting on it forever and being upset. But that's how Daisy deals with something, is just being
yeah,
like, I can fix it on my own and then just push everything down and
yeah,
not have
The
conflict.
passive aggression of it all too, because
yeah,
in a way you kind of like,
Yes.
you can't blame Daisy because Daisy keeps on telling Aisha to to read her fan fiction, and she
yeah,
doesn't.
Mhm.
She's like, "Well, fine, bitch. I'm just gonna write a story about. I'm gonna
Yeah.
write a character about."
yeah, yeah. So needless to say, Asa feels awful the next day because she just like spiraled into this fan fiction. And Daisy obviously knows nothing about this. She's like, hey, we should like hang out. And Asa is also starting to talk about the mystery again. And Daisy is like, no, dude, we're not researching the mystery anymore. Like, we're done, remember? Like, we got money, we can't do it anymore.
Mhm.
So instead she ends up hanging out with Davis after school and they go swimming.
I think this is when they talk about mom's coma, the coma she was in,
Oh
because
Oh,
yeah,
is that the?
it might have been,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
but it all blends together. I mean, they
Yeah,
start talking about it, and she's opening up about her disease. They're looking at the stars, and Davis is like, "Hey, let's go swimming because if this was in the Midwest, this existed at my house, I would go crazy." It's like a pool you can heat up to 80
yeah,
degrees in
heated
the winter,
pool.
Mhm.
and they go fucking swimming in like the fall, and they look at the stars some
Yeah,
more. Crazy. And this is when he's kind of talking about the star thing that Nate was talking about, that
Mhm.
planets are like cemented in time and those timelines keep our loved ones alive. And it's a comforting moment until Asa gets home and starts freaking out again because she cannot stop thinking about Daisy's story, and has a bit of an episode thinking about like all of the germs in her body.
yeah.
And the next day, her and
She
Daisy
does
go to.
drink more hand sanitizer this night. That's
She
important.
does.
Oh,
Oh,
she does.
girl.
Okay.
Yeah,
She does. And the next
Rough.
day, Daisy and her go to Applebee's because she's like, I just need to confront Daisy.
yeah.
And Daisy, it does not go the way that Asa was
Oh,
expecting.
and it also doesn't help that like Asa is exhausted because she's now had 2 nights in a row of her just like spiral reading. And so when she confronts Daisy, she even just says like, couldn't you have named her like anything else, like at a base level? And it turns into what I think is a really good representation of a fight where it's like there's no absolute right or
Mhm.
absolute wrong in the situation.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
both have moments of being absolutely right, where it's like Daisy's like, dude, you don't ask me anything about myself ever. Like, what are my parents' names? Like, you've been saying you're going to read this fan fiction for years and you never have. And Ayala's like, or Aza's like, you don't know like anything about like how my thoughts work and things like that.
It,
Yeah, it's insane. Like, oh my God, this felt so realistic to me,
Yeah,
of like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
um just not being a confrontational person, but also just like not expressing something exactly how you want it and having to be the easygoing person. And so the minute someone kicks the door open, you're like, hey, you know what, we're here, why not? You don't know anything about my family, I love you, but your anxiety is hard for me. Like, the
Which
fact
is,
you make money makes
yeah,
our friendship uneven. And like,
It was the point of the book where everything that kind of annoyed the reader or you like about Daisy was like justified.
yeah. Because I
And
mean,
yeah.
it's a really good I don't know what the word I'm looking, visualization, or that's not the right word, but I'm going to go with it. It's a really good visualization about how like mental health does not excuse you from being a shitty person or a shitty friend. Like,
Yeah.
you can still be a bad friend, and it's not an excuse to say, well, I have, you know, OCD, I have anxiety, I have depression, I have this. And it's like, okay, but you're still having shitty actions towards other people.
Can you guys hear that? The
No,
thunder? Okay.
no.
Sorry, it
No.
is so loud. It just started.
No.
Here. That was giving me anxiety, speaking
Oh
of
my God.
anxiety.
Keep going.
And so this entire conversation is taking place while they are driving, and Daisy in the middle of this, Aza like stops her and is like, "You haven't stopped talking in 10 years," which was another reason I kind of hated Daisy's character, was it seemed
Yeah.
like she never stopped to care for Aza. But I think when you like do that for so long and you're a crutch for someone, you just kind of get exhausted and you're like, I have to be the upbeat one. I have to keep going. And Aza's freaking out on her, and as she's freaking out, Daisy yells out and is like, Holmesy, because that's Aza's last name.
Yeah.
And Aza doesn't hit the brakes fast enough in the car. She rams into this car in front of her so hard that her like ribs hurt. And she gets out and she's sobbing because this is her dad's car. Her dad's phone is in the back. She gets it. The screen is shattered. The ambulance is like, we need to put you on like a stretcher. We need to take you in. And she's just like, my dad, my dad. Oh, he's like it's such a sad scene.
It is. And like this scene is also written so like frantically, and with also just such like blips of moments, as like from like the car accident to post car accident to hospital. And I was like, that is so what like those moments feel like when they're so high
Mhm.
stress, high anxiety, and high like fear. That you really are only like remembering like the touchdown points of like how you got from here to here.
And when when she's freaking out about her dad and her dad being gone because of the phone, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
paramedic goes, no, 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 like your dad is happy that you're alive.
Yeah.
And because of course paramedic doesn't know,
Yeah.
they're doing what they're trained to do, which is like to calm them in a way.
Yeah.
And like that really hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Jesus.
know. And then while this is all happening, she's being carted to the hospital. Her mom's like, I can't lose you too. And
Yeah.
Aza is freaking out because the hospital is like the worst place she could be for catching C. diff, that colon thing that like kills someone in 3 days.
Yeah.
And she has a lacerated liver and she's gonna have to be there for 2 weeks.
Yeah. And like, so she's freaking out now because now that she's been worried about getting C. diff, she's put herself in the exact place that you can actually catch C. diff, even though it's still a very hard disease to contract.
Yeah.
But her mom's like staying at the hospital all night, but Aza cannot sleep. She is spiraling. She's on pain meds. She's in so much pain. She like wakes up in the middle of the night and runs across the room to like the hand sanitizer dispenser and just starts shoving it in her mouth. And she immediately throws up. Her mom wakes up and is freaking out and like calls the nurse. And it's like, it's a really just vivid scene of just such a
Yeah.
breakdown.
And it's like all through the perspective of the voices inside her head,
Yeah.
like hammering in her that like you're gonna die like this, you're gonna die this way, you are sick, like just like this negative self-talk that's almost like manifested itself as like another person inside of her. It was so profound.
He does a really good job of like those negative thoughts being louder than like her thoughts trying to combat it. So you can kind of like hear that negativity like more so than you hear her trying to be like, leave me alone, stop, I need to stop thinking like this.
Yeah, it completely
It's just
takes
it's really
over.
really well written.
Yeah, it is so crazy how well written that is, and like the negative self spirals.
Yeah.
And obviously her mental health is like not okay. Dr. Singh shows up and is like, you're not taking your meds. And this is the result of that as well. And she's coming more often to like stay with her and coming by the
Yeah.
house twice a week now when she is out of the hospital.
Yeah, and we also do get a really nice moment here where like Aza almost realizes that even this person that's supposed to be like her doctor actually cares about her well-being, because not only is she in the hospital and like, you know, doing her job saying we're gonna put you on new meds, this, that, we can't have you drinking hand sanitizer anymore, she also just straight up tells like Aza from like no doctor mode, you're going to survive this. Which
Yeah.
really strikes Aza in a good way. But yeah, and then we kind of cut to her coming back to school the 2 weeks later.
Yep. she's going back to school. Daisy and her make up pretty fast, and Daisy's like, okay, great, because I have so much I need to tell you. She had to cut her hair because her sister put gum in it. She broke up with Michael because Daisy wanted to be single, which flex. That's
Wow.
at
Yeah.
16 relatable. I
Like,
was
let's
like, go
go.
She's
off.
like, why do I have to manage all his emotions like a therapist? And it's like, ugh, yeah.
And it seems like Aza's asking questions about like what do her parents do,
Yeah.
and Daisy's asking Aza questions like, do you think about killing yourself? And Aza's like, no, it's not like about killing myself. It's like this inescapable feeling of just being like horribly aware of my presence on Earth and not being able to reconcile with it.
Mhm.
And
And
it
she's
just seems like they're like planting the seeds to sow.
Yeah, it seems like they're reaching their like but basically like, oh, this is how we need to like relearn how to communicate with each other. And I really like in this scene a lot, Daisy multiple times asks her like, should I keep talking? And Aza's like, yeah, keep talking. Because like Aza's not a talker. A part of her does like to just listen to Daisy talk. And
Yeah.
it's really, really sweet. But they do have to eat out lunch outside in the middle of winter because Daisy's like, it's gonna be way too awkward with Michael at the lunch table. I planned us a picnic though.
She does. And this is where we get the namesake of the book too, because they
Yeah.
talk about turtles all the way down. Because Daisy's like the pursuit of finding the real you reminds me of this story my mom used to say about how it's like an old woman is kind of explaining that the planet is like not a world, it's just like a world on the back of a turtle on the back of another world on the back of a turtle, and it's just turtles all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
Which I
Yeah.
don't know if you had something to say about that, Nate, but I know you brought it up earlier.
Oh yeah, just how it's like a professor is explaining how like molecularly and biologically the world works and the history of it all, and then at the very end of the lecture, this woman goes, "Well, I've been actually you're not right. Like I'm just told that the Earth is just on top of this
Yeah.
turtle," and he goes, "Well," and he wants to entertain that, right? And he goes, "Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So then what's under the turtle?" She goes, "Another one. What's under that turtle? Another one." And I just love how she brings it up. I guess kind of I'm almost just like reiterating the point I was making earlier on how there's comfort in the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
Daisy understands that Asia. I'm not going to say that.
It's Aza.
Aza. Daisy
Mhm.
understands that Aza is struggling with the unknown and not understanding what the true answer is, like within her OCD and within her
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. And
Yeah.
like I remember hearing that part of the book and laughing the same time Aza does,
Yeah.
and just like almost finding comfort in it too, because this entire time we're spent in the mind of Aza, like the entire
Yeah.
book, and like I thought it was so great how John Green was able to really bring this like levity to her mental illness in
Yeah.
a way
Mhm.
that made us feel comfortable and made us feel like hopeful and happy for the
Yeah.
protagonist.
And even though like I think she acknowledges like coming back to school feels weird and like you'd think that like, oh, after this, life-changing event, she'd be just all fixed and all better, but like that's not how it works. So having this moment where it's just kind of like this is kind of how it works, but it's not an answer, it's not a solution, it's not a fix all, it's not even a kind of fix. It's just a way of thinking.
Yeah.
It's just a thought. It's just an actual thought.
Yeah, yeah, and well, there's a really good quote about it at the end that I'm sure we will read as
Yeah.
well.
We're gonna just
But
read the last 20 pages, I'm sure.
Oh my god.
there is, I feel like the last page at least, if we have
Yeah.
time. But Aza is kind of finding peace in the fact that like there's a vast universe and she is just small in it. And this kind of conversation pushes her to decide to finally tell her mom that Davis gave her $50,000 that she's going to put towards college. And her mom doesn't love this. She's like, he should have just gotten you a necklace like a normal guy. But she comes to be okay with it because she kind of has to be.
Yeah. And then immediately after this, Aza's on a roll because she also like she's heard a lot about Michael from Daisy, and now Michael's cornering Aza, talking about Daisy, and she just kind of like corners them together and is like, "You two should talk together because I don't want to be in between this. We love a person setting a boundary." And then a little bit after this, she does go to Applebee's with Davis, and she tells him more about like her spirals, and this is just the kind of the way it is. It's not getting better. It's not getting worse. It's always going to be there. And they ultimately kind of conclude that they are going to go their separate ways, even though they weren't really anything to begin with.
Yeah, because it seems like she just wants kind of a relationship via text, and he's like, I can't do this if we're
Yeah.
like not doing this in person. And they decide
Yeah.
Yeah.
not to. And the next day, Daisy's asking Aza, since her and Michael are back together, if she'll go to Michael's art exhibition in the sewer. And it's like the sewer that was unfinished by the pickets because it was supposed to bring like fresh water to Indiana.
Yeah.
But the
It
pickets were like,
didn't. Spoiler
Indiana can
alert. They didn't
suffer.
finish it.
Because Indiana is the first major city to be built not by a massive body of water, which
Yes.
we learn in the book.
Yeah, something I learned about Indiana
Yeah.
reading this book.
I
And
know,
it was kind
that
of
was pretty interesting.
part of the message of the book as well, where like something good and thriving can be
Yeah.
built even if it's not by a life source.
Can be built in Indiana, you know?
That's the moral of the book.
Kind of beautiful.
But at this like sewer art show, it seems like a really like cool idea, but like in reality, it's just a sewer that smells really bad. But a lot of like very popular people are there. So Daisy and Aza kind of let Michael do his thing because they're like, hey, you network. We're gonna go on a walk, and there's a really cool scene here where like it's getting super pitch black, and they just have flashlights, and Aza has them both turn off their flashlights so she can kind of explain physically how it feels when Aza's having a thought spiral. And it's really cool because they're just like hanging out and they're talking and they're just like actually being present with each other. There's a really good quote on page 260 that I'm going to read because it's short. That is, oh, I should have had this pulled up so soon, but I'm there. Oh shoot, it's not here.
You said 260?
Oh,
I said 260. It's the Meadow
Okay.
quote that I really wanted to read. Let me find it. Someone else keep talking while I'm looking for this.
my foot fell asleep.
So they're walking through the sewer, and Daisy is like, "How are you? How are you not freaking out right now? When like you're always obsessed with germs, and we're literally walking in shit."
Yeah, I don't know if that was the quote you were looking for, but if not,
No, that's not it.
I liked that moment a lot because they were obviously in the rats and the stuff, and Aza tells Daisy to turn her light off, and she's like, "Oh, you see this? When we're in here with no light, and you only have your brain to think and make up for all the other small spaces of things that could exist. That's what it's like for me existing in my mind."
I
And
found
Daisy's
it.
like, "That sucks."
Yeah, no, so after they keep kind of walking after that, but there's a quote on 266. That's why I lost it, because my 6 looked like the 0. But the quote is, we went out to the meadow that night talking about college and kissing and religion and art, and I didn't feel like I was watching a movie of our conversation. I was having it. I could listen to her and I knew she was listening to me. And that's so important because the entire book, Aza's talking about feeling so removed, and finally like in a space where things get to be so quiet, she can actually just be present. And that's really cool. And I really like that quote.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, like, she hasn't been able to like give herself that, and also like I think Daisy on some end probably wanted that connection too, because to carry a conversation can be so exhausting when you also are dying for connection.
Yeah.
Um,
But this place is also called Pogue's Run, and they keep walking down, and it's starting to smell worse as they're walking further and further away from this art show. And they start to realize that like Pogue's Run is the jogger's mouth, because like run, jogger. And then they're like, oh shit, we kind of figured out that Pickett is probably the cause of this smell, but we're not going to walk any further to figure it out.
Yeah, so when he was running away from the authorities, he goes to his unfinished project.
Yeah.
And I guess like John Green's like, he's implying that like he ran there and like died there, and like, ugh.
Yeah, no, there's another really good quote about it where it says, you think solving mysteries would bring you closure, that closing the loop would comfort and quiet your mind, but it never does. The truth always disappoints. As we circulated around the gallery looking for Michael, I didn't feel like I'd found the solid and nesting doll or anything. Nothing had been fixed, not really. It was like the zoologist said about science, you never really find answers, just new and deeper questions. Which is like also a thing, because it's like sometimes looking for, the solution, it's just like brings the reality of it.
Mhm.
They were all so excited to get the reward money, but at the end of the day, the reward's for a dead person, and that's the reality.
Yeah, and so this does not help her psyche at all when she's at home. Like her mom is saying that she's really nervous about her because Aza's really razzled, and Aza finally sets some boundaries and being like, "Okay, I have a new rule which is you can't really ask me if I'm anxious because your weight of worry doesn't help." And her mom's like, "I'll try." And now she has a really important decision in front of her, which is telling Davis about this or not, because if she tells him and the authorities go to see like if his dad is there, then he won't get to have like all of the amenities, and like he won't have any access to the money or like the house
Yeah,
for
'cause the money goes to the lizard.
yeah. But if it's like 7 years, he's got like a 7 years cushion if they can't find his dad to just have
Yeah.
everything. But she does ask Davis if he can come over because it's important. And she tells him flat out, she's like, "I think I know where he is, but it's a really bad smell." And his face just like drops in fear because he knows what that
Yeah.
might mean.
Yeah, he has to like actually face the reality, which is like where we actually see him like because I feel like at this moment we realize he's been putting on a face for Noah and for the public the entire time. But now he actually
Yeah.
faces the reality that his dad is gone too, and he just really breaks down and they just kind of sit together, which is it's really sweet. It's very, very sad. Um
It
and
is.
then yeah, she does read his blog that night, and then he has like this entire like message about how like nothing lasts, and it's like how he
Why
feels
do I
like
have to miss everybody so much?
yeah, it's so sad. But then something we get that we don't get in a lot of John Green's book is we get what happens later. So we get a one
Mhm.
month later cut, and we see that the news has found Pickett's body, and we learned that Davis told the cops, and yeah, and that's kind of it was his thing. He's like, I couldn't put Noah through that like error of not knowing. Um, and she asks him to
Yeah.
hang out, and he just doesn't reply.
No, he doesn't until one night in April where he comes over, he's just knocking on the door, and they go and they look at the stars together at his house. And he kind of updates her on their life, which is that they're going to Colorado because Noah's going to school for troubled kids.
Mhm.
And Davis is going to finish out school at a public school, and I want to read the end because I think it's a really good end. And also, I mean, you know, employs the flash forward a bit as well, but in a
Yeah.
really abstract way. So after she talks to Davis about this, she is talking about yeah, this is what it is. We settled into a silence, and I felt the sky's bigness above me, the unimaginable vastness of it all. Um, in the moonless darkness, we were just witnesses to light, and I felt a sliver of what must have driven Davis to astronomy. There was a kind of relief in having your smallness laid bare before you, and I realized something Davis must have already known. Spirals grow infinitely smaller the farther you follow them inward, but they also grow infinitely larger the farther you follow them out. And I knew I would remember that feeling underneath the split up sky, back before the machinery of fate ground us up into one thing or another, back when we could still be everything. I thought lying there that I might love him for the rest of my life. We did love each other. Maybe we never said it. Maybe love was never something we were in, but it was something I felt. I loved him, and I thought maybe I will never see him again, and I'll be stuck missing him, and isn't that so terrible? But it turns out not to be terrible because I know the secret that the me lying beneath the sky could not imagine. I know the girl would go on, that she would grow up, have children, and love them. That despite loving them, she would get too sick to care for them, be hospitalized, get better, and then get sick again. I know a shrink would say, write it down, how you got here. So you would, and in writing it down, you realize love is not a tragedy or a failure, but a gift. You remember your first love because they show you, prove to you that you can love and be loved, that nothing in this world is deserved except for love, that love is both how you become a person and why. But underneath those skies, your hand, no, my hand, no, our hand, in his, you don't know yet. You don't know that the spiral painting is in that box on your dining room table with a post-it note stuck to the back of that frame. Stole this from a lizard for you. You can't know yet how the painting will follow you from one apartment to another and then eventually to a house, or how decades later you'll be so proud that Daisy continues to be your best friend. That growing into different lives only makes you more fiercely loyal to each other. You don't know that you go to college, find a job, make a life, see it unbuilt and rebuilt. I, a singular proper noun, would go on, if always in a conditional tense. But you don't know any of that yet. We squeeze his hand, he squeezes back. You stare up at the same sky together, and after a while he says, I have to go, and you say goodbye, and he says goodbye, Asa. And no one ever says goodbye unless they want to see you again.
Yeah, I
Ooh,
think that's my favorite
so
ending
good.
of any of the John Green books. It's just so well written. It captures so many different fleeting feelings and emotions, and it's stuck with me since I finished it a couple days ago. It's just such a relatable and
Hmm.
real way to end this story.
I think it's
And
like it's the same kind of ending. I mean, it's like a more upbeat ending than like the sadder ones we've gotten.
Yeah.
But it like answers a question and also leaves so many questions in the same way. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
ugh, what a feeling to have.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And when Davis decides, when you find out why Davis ultimately like called the cops um on on his father's body, because the police were called, and
Mhm.
it was like this big deal because they thought, oh, wait it out 7 years. And he goes, so when he finally answers why he decided to call the cops instead of keeping it a secret, he says, I had to be a big brother.
Yeah.
And he like does it for his younger brother,
Mhm.
because his younger brother was kind of plagued with this sadness and desperation that his father was no longer there.
Mhm.
And his father being alive meant that his father continued to not love Noah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he knew as like an older brother that he had to take this initiative, like he had to take the initiative and
Mhm.
show to his brother, like, no, you are loved. I love you. And the other man who, like, your father, he's not back because he's actually dead. He's not
Mhm.
choosing to come back. And I loved how they embraced the not having the house and not
Yeah.
being able to live in the billionaire house and not getting all the money just for the sake of his younger brother being okay. And like that to me was just so profound,
Yeah.
because Davis
Yeah.
was living with this terrible situation of having to father his brother,
Mhm.
and by letting go of his father, he
Mhm.
was able to be the positive influence that Davis was trying to be for his brother the entire time.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I thought that
Yeah.
was so profound.
I agree. No, there's so many layers to this book, and I feel like we could just talk in circles about so many things for hours and hours and hours of remember this part, or this
Mhm.
conversation, or this thing. Because it's just like there is so much worth talking about in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a really good book.
Yeah. But with that, I think we should transition to our canceled character of the week. I know this is gonna be a hard one. I feel like we should end in the top 5 because much like this book, we do have to end on a more positive note.
Yep.
So let's talk about our canceled character. And our canceled character, while cancel culture is bad, it's going to be our least favorite character of this entire book because we can cancel fictional characters as much as we want.
Yes, we can.
Um, Nate, you're our guest. Do you have any nominations for the canceled character this week?
I do. And I I kind of had the idea like right when we started the podcast.
Okay.
Oh.
And this is more like, if we had to cancel someone,
Yeah.
this would be the
And
one
we
to
do,
do. Yeah.
unfortunately.
I'm gonna go ahead and give it to the mother, because she
Oh, I thought you
wait,
meant Davis's mother.
oh no, god, no, Aza's mother, Aza's
Yeah.
mom, because though I mean, you could argue that I don't know if she's good at her job or not, that doesn't matter, but she was there were parts of her character that were a big source of stress and anxiety
Yeah.
towards the protagonist, towards Asa, and everything that she did to Davis, I thought was kind of rude, and the whole like, oh, I can't lose you.
Mhm.
That to me just wasn't sitting well, and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say she's a great mom. She really does
Yeah.
take care of her,
Yeah.
but if we got to cancel someone, gotta be the mom.
Meg, what about you? Do you have one?
Oh man. When I'll just say what I was going to say originally. I was always thinking Daisy.
Interesting.
I mean it could be because it was like a little bit of self-loathing.
Mhm.
But I was just like really mad at how little patience she gave, and I think talking about it was like nice, and I think
Yeah.
maybe it was just because I saw so much of myself in Daisy, but I kind of hated Daisy.
Yeah.
But
See, I would.
not in like a way of how she was written. I think she was written really well. I think I just like
Yeah.
hated her so much because I saw so much of me in her.
And I was gonna cancel Holly, the server from Applebee's, because I felt like she was always
Mm.
just really kind of like too much of a bitch to these high school students. Like, yes, Holly, I get they're sitting in your section, but like the Applebee's is never full. Like, all you have to do is take their order and like leave and drop off the check. Honestly, that should be your easiest table. I was a waitress for many, many years, and tables like that, you just kind of let them do their thing and you worry about making tips on the other tables.
Yeah, and who
So
is
that's why
at
I
this
was gonna pick
Applebee's?
Holly.
Who is
Like,
at this Applebee's in Indiana either? Like, it's probably like no one's. It doesn't seem
exactly. So
like
I
it's
feel like there's
busy.
a really solid argument for Holly at the Applebee's.
All right.
I'll concede to Holly. Why not?
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
But also,
All
I
right,
could
then.
concede to the mom. I got mommy
Yeah,
issues.
it can be a tie. It can be a tie both ways.
Okay.
But now let's talk about our top 5. And this one's kind of a doozy. This is going to be our top 5 parts of Davis's mansion that we never saw in the book, but will now be enjoyed by the Tutura lizard. Now that he's a billionaire, that's going to solve immortality.
Absolutely.
I'll kick things off because I think I came up with this number 5. I feel like there's got to be a slide into a ball pit somewhere in this mansion, and I really think this lizard is going to enjoy the fuck out of going from a slide into a ball pit.
Yes, and if he is having too much fun in the ball pit and he needs a little snack after, I think they should have a Sonic drive-through inside of the mansion. I don't know how they get the car in there, but it's important that it is a drive-through.
There's a little golf cart or go-kart or something.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yes.
There's an on-premise server always on roller skates,
Aw.
ready and willing to deliver the food.
And
That's
she
what they do at
only
Sonic.
makes $3 an hour, and they don't tip her.
They don't tip her.
Yep.
Number 3, when you're done eating your little snackies from Sonic, and you're a little tired, you want to get some rest, you got to go to the sauna.
Oh my god.
That lizard's going to hit up the sauna and bake all day.
It probably helped him
Absolutely.
shed his skin whenever he needs to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That'd be nice.
And it probably best reflects his natural habitat. So.
And
Yeah.
then number 2, Nate came up with this one too. It's a bowling alley because it'd be fun for him to slide his little body down the bowling alley and come back up through the ball dispository.
Absolutely.
And then, can I say
Yeah,
number,
you say number 1.
Number
Yes,
1.
absolutely.
Number 1, the secret entrance to the Butterfly Pavilion. Because much like the movie theater, there's cool
so many secret
things.
passageways.
Yeah, I gotta have a cool secret passageway to cool things. And so when you need a little snack, just pull whatever magical lever or move a painting, and behind that is a butterfly pavilion.
Aww.
I was thinking it could be an ice can that like welcomes him. There,
Ooh,
it's
ice
like
can would be good. Or he has to put his little paw up to like a finger sensor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's fun. I love it.
Man, we have fun. But that was it for Turtles All the Way Down. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. And if you enjoyed us, maybe you'll follow along with us elsewhere, like on Instagram, where we're at Meggie_and_Laura.
Yep, we're also on Twitter and TikTok at Yeah We Read It. And Nate, a lovely, lovely guest and esteemed bestie. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, Twitter's Nate Todd and Instagram's Nate Todd _. So yeah,
Good luck finding him.
give
folks.
your boy a follow. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Yeah, thank you for-
love having an excuse to read and being on this podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna say thank you for reading
love
a
you.
whole book with us. We know that I always feel bad that I'm like, want to come on the podcast? You have homework, so
It's great.
It's always fun when we have
Sorry.
friends on. But that's gonna be it for this episode, and we'll be back next week with our wrap up of our season 9, where we're going to really, really relive all of our favorite moments, thoughts, and unanswered feelings from this past season. Because boy, was it a roller coaster of good, bad, and ugly moments. And I can't wait personally.
Me too.
All right then. All right, we did it.
Done.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.